Okay, so I'm going to be talking about League of Dungeoneers. So this um, came through a few weeks back. This is the box. It's a crowdfunded campaign that I went on to, recently delivered. It's a dungeon crawl RPG, but it's pretty old school. And what I mean by that, think Dungeons and Dragons mixed with Hero Quest, and that's kind of what you've got here. It is co-op and solo, so you are playing against a kind of AI, which is really nice. But I'm going to put a big caveat here, because if you do play D&D, this may be something to really pique your interest. So they've come about a whole kind of story. There's 2 quest books with side missions and everything else. Obviously, I've labelled up just to try and help me a little bit more. And at the back of this book, so you've got a proper handbook, is the best way to talk about it, where you've got a character creator, talking about the characters and stuff. So you've got a character creator that you're creating your characters, and as you can see, this is where the D&D comes in. The D&D aspect of the game comes in, where you create your character. You've got your species or in class as well, or race and class if you like D&D. There is a unique mechanic in it. Also strength, constitution, dex, wisdom, and resolve. So slightly different hit points, hand to hand, one-handed and two-handed. But then what these are built, just like your skills in D&D, you've got your combat skill, range skill, dodge, pick lock, Sparta, heal, alchemy, perception, prayer, and foraging. Then you've got your weapons that you can put in. Then you've got your different locations around your body where you can put your armor. It all has durability based on these rolls and what can happen in the game. You have sanity as well, which is really cool. And then you've got your quick slots. And then you kind of classic stuff like coins, they call it coins in here, XP, statuses, and encumbrance. Then you've got prayers and effects. You could have spells as well. You've got backpack slots, talents, perks, items, and a bit of background as well, which comes into play with your perks. Then you've got a few other bits as well linked to people that you hire. They can be quite different. So, for example, this one here, you can see here we've got spells and familiars. So it's slightly laid out, slightly different. And then your trap disarming skill for my halfling, for example. Protective shield, healing hands, and flare eye spells for our human wizard or mage. So you decide to build up your character. You choose your... So, those of you who have played RPGs will seem very familiar. You're barbarian, alchemist, rogue, ranger, warrior, thief, wizard, warrior priest. Then you got backgrounds, and that can be randomly rolled. Then you got equipment and leveling up. So it's very, very similar. Lots of tables to work on it. You got your magic and prayers. And then it talks about how you actually do a dungeon, okay? Then you got interaction, encounters, attack and damage, travelling settlements. So in this game, as you can see over here, you've got an overarching map of the land that you're working on. I'm currently in the main city, a silver city next to the river, and you see there's little hexes. So there's a whole travelling mechanic where you've got to have supplies or you have to forage for each day that you are travelling, and you get a certain amount of things. You've got areas of interest around the board, a little bit like Gloomhaven. And then in this particular story or lore, you've got like the Southlands, which are past the outposts. So think, I guess, a little bit like Horizon Zero Dawn, where you're kind of like going out of the comfort zone, but you get better delves as you go there. The best way to think of it is a bit like delves. In this game, you also have loads of stuff in this box. It's very, very heavy. So if you're in the desert, you've got travel events. Think a bit like Gloomhaven again. Wilderness, and on the roads. And then what can happen, if I just very quickly show you, is you can encounter different people. You can actually open up side quests through this as well. So you might be doing the main quest and then you suddenly go and do a side quest. Just like I was doing on here, I did a side quest which actually tied into the main quest. So I was trying to find this fugitive, this bandit fugitive, and lo and behold, I'll talk about the dungeon in a second and how that works. He's here, and it's all based on kind of roles. So your encounters in the dungeon are all based on roles. So the game itself, League of Dungeoneers, is quite random. It's really quite random. I like it. But for example, like one of the first little scenarios that you do in the quest, you encounter some rats basically, and then it's 1d10 rats. So you could roll a 10 and be against 10 rats, or you could roll a 1 and be against 1 rat. Now there's more loot with 10 rats obviously, but it's considerably harder. I don't mind that because it gives a variability and a bit of an unknown, and that's the beauty of randomness of dice, of course. But there's a lot of dice throwing in this particular game. Now, you can easily transpose this to a normal D&D game. You can use an overarching map if you want. The tiles and the standees are what will really help it just to switch over to that D&D, if that is something that you're interested in. However, I really like the game. I haven't played much of it at all. I've just scratched the surface, but I wanted to do a little bit of an overview about what the game is. So, for example, just to give you the depth of this game, you've got a quick reference compendium here with loads of tables about selling, repairing items, alchemy, spells, power stones, events when you're in the dungeon, magic items, legendary items, which you've got all cards for. What to do with levers when you see them in the dungeon, the treasure table, and a different. I mean, this, for example, if you look on a tile. So if you just bring about a random tile here, everything you can see on it will come with its own card, and it tells you what you can search. For starters, it tells you a bit about it, tells you how many doors are coming off it. So it kind of like populates this procedural dungeon, I guess you can call it. And then once you kind of look at those, you can look onto here. So bed, for example, the beds, if you search those, you roll a d10. And it's 50-50 if you're going to find anything. Most of the time you find nothing, but you might find a treasure in a 1 or 2. So it's like a 20% chance of finding treasure. You got a 20% chance of finding 1d100 coins. And again, depends on the roll, right? A lot of the mechanics in League of Dungeoneers is worked on a d100. So if you know D&D, you'll know about this. But d100 is 2d10, one with 10s and one with singles. All the dice come in with the game, of course. So if you wanted to attack, let's say my dwarf Jarek Silverhorn wanted to attack and it was in hand-to-hand, you look at your combat skill. It's 54. Okay, so you're looking to get 54 or under on the dice. But depending on what you're attacking, might have some modifiers to hit. It might be under in cover, so it's even more to hit. So it might have shields and more negatives to hit. And then you roll your dice and a 78, so higher value is worse in this game. So the idea is the higher your stats go, the more chance, obviously, you've got to roll that number. So if you've got a stat at, my ranger has 67. It's also, my ranger Elendor, he actually went to the church and prayed to the god and got a +5 to his range skill from a blessing. So he's on, with a +5, that turns it to 72. You can see that we're now talking about like a 72% chance of getting a hit. And if you roll those, get an 81, of course I do. But if we roll 98, wow, this is really showing it. So I'm missing a lot here. 45, that's a bit more like it. Roll a 45, I get the hit. Then you go to your weapon, and just like D&D, you look see what damage it is. It's a longbow, it does 1d10. You grab a d10, you roll that dice, you get a 9. It's got armor piercing. You need to reload it. So you get 2 actions on your turn and you're trying to think what you're going to do with those 2 actions. So in this case, you're kind of using your 2 actions, moving around the dungeon. So this is a dungeon tile that the dungeon that we're delving in over here. You start on the start tile all the time. Then you move through. Now there's a chance that you've got events. So there's a constant threat. So while you're going through the dungeon, you've got one of these white free boards, which is really cool. So you keep updating all the time. And you're constantly increasing your threat, especially when you open a door or a chest. You win a combat. You roll threat above the threat level. In other words, if you roll above your threat level, so mine's 6 at the moment on a D20. So you roll a D20. And if you get below, equal to or below your threat level, you trigger an event. So you roll that, you trigger an event, you roll on the event die. And then you see what happens. Most of the time, it's a wandering monster. Hence, the Necromancer. Okay, so Necromancer turned up for me, literally on my 2nd tile. Then, what you've also got in here is you've got a couple of cheat sheets. So this tells everything about what you need to know. It's brilliant. This is a fantastic cheat sheet. It's double-sided. But considering how in-depth the rules are, this covers so much of it. What happens if you do roll equal to or less than your threat? Well, you roll this table, and then the threat decreases by this, so you suddenly become it. What about a door? Okay, roll a 1d on a d10. 1 6 is open. 7 it's locked, but it's a pretty simple lock. So it randomizes so many elements, which makes it replayable. I think it really hits the mechanic, or else that's really hard to do when you don't have a DM, a dungeon master, to kind of determine these levels and these roles and everything else. This game does it such a good way in terms of just using dice to build up that randomness, because you're not sure what's in this dungeon. It could be easy, it could be hard, and this really hits it. It is very random, and that might put people off. I don't know, but for example, if you roll a d20 and 1 to 12, so most likely a wandering monster appears. If a wandering monster is already out there, it takes a move. Threat roll in combat. So you've got a threat roll in combat, so it's different to if it's not in combat. You've got traps. So there's traps. So if you open a door, there could be a trap. So on you roll a d6 with a d10 whenever you open a door or a chest. And then if you hit a 6, it's trapped. And you get a trap door. Then you can do, if you've got someone with pick locks, you roll a perception test first of all. If you can pass the perception test, you don't trigger the trap. And then you can go back to it and try and disarm it. So it tells you how to do all that. Initiative. So initiative in this game, you have these acrylic tokens, okay? So at the moment in the game I'm playing, I would put in the tokens that we would use. You got the white ones for the heroes, and then you got the black ones for the enemies. And then you basically put it in the bag, and the activations are blind drawn. So you draw them straight out the bag, and then you play them, and then you move around like so. So that's how this works. Then you play rounds of combat. And again, it's all explained on here. So you move models based on initiative. So you do your initiative, check for sanity changes, check for party morale. So there's a party morale in the game. And the beauty is all of the sheets, the single sheets, have got all of the things that will happen. Here's all the modifiers. Okay, you do have to keep checking it. And once you get kind of a little bit used to it, I've started getting used to it, so I kind of know what's going on. You might do a rest action. Especially if you're out of combat, I recommend. The Wandering Monster, what happens with that? What happens if you're searching? So you can search in tiles, you can search in corridors, you can search all the items that are on the thing. Then on the other side, you've got about combat. So there's fear, there's creatures that cause fear in the game. What actions can you do and how many action points do they take? You got magic and how that works, and the bonuses and the modifiers to hit, the different types of damaging. Power attacks, parry. So you can actually parry in this game. You can, if you've got a shield, you can shield as well. Then what happens with certain rolls? So there's like crit effects on this. So if you roll a 0-0, which is basically a crit on a damage, it will cause him to a fumble. Sorry, it's like 100. Sorry, a 0-0. So if you get 0-0 on the D10 and then a 0 on the D10, that's 100. If you get 100, it's a fumble. So, we drop your weapon or something like that. And then 1 to 5. So if you get 0, 0 on this, but then you get a 1, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or a 5 on this dice, then that's a crit. And you deal, to hit, lets a hero roll 2 damage rolls and chooses the highest. If you do it on a basic skill, regaining 1 point of energy, or increasing that skill stat by 1. So it's kind of like a little bit of an experience idea. A bit, you've mastered that skill slightly, so you can just pump up that skill a little bit. Really cool. Morale and what the effects of that are: sanity, gear, healing, looting corpses, what you get from looting corpses in terms of the 5 tiers of treasure, and from the roll, what that gives you. A lot of the time you're going to get nothing. Again, it is more random. So you can be very lucky and find amazing weapons and treasure right from the get-go on the first mission, or you might be unlucky and not get anything through your first few missions. So it does have that random element. Then you've got your search table with all the elements, which are all the different objects on another sheet. You've then got a bestiary. Okay, so again, if you know Dungeons and Dragons, you'll be used to this. It's slightly different. It talks about the different types that are in the game, and some exotic monsters, which are very unique. But effectively, in this game, you've got bandits and brigades, you've got orcs and goblins, dark elves, the undead, ancient lands, beasts, and reptiles. So they're the different classes of enemies that you got, and you got a hell of a lot of them. Then, it talks about the monster cards. So just like your character, it has some stats. Talk about range skills, combat skills, and everything else. It talks about the different casting it uses, how much XP, what loot you get from them, and how much health. Here are the Necromancer's spells. So you've actually got little cards for all the spells or items. So everything's there on the table for you to see. Then what they do, let's take the Necromancer for example. You've got 2 things to look at. You've got basic enemy actions, enemy activation. So magic user or enemy armed with a ranged weapon are the first ones to activate from the back. So if there's multiple enemies, you're going to activate those first. So order of activation. Basic enemy actions, as I've just said. Then you go to the specific one. So you might have a beast, you might have a lower undead, you might have a magic user, you might have a higher undead, so you've got different ones. And then it's kind of like triggers, like a lot of AI systems, okay? So if adjacent to a hero, roll a d6. This is what they're going to do. If no line of sight to heroes, roll a d6. That's what it's going to do. Line of sight to hero, but not adjacent. Cast random magic. So effectively, the mage is going to try and cast magic most of the time, unless we get in hand-to-hand with them. And then they've got close combat spells as well. So they always make it so the enemy magic users have a range of different types of spells. Range spells, support spells, and close combat spells. So you just follow that, and that's enemy activation. Just like a hero, they also have 2 activations. You've also got a lovely little card to show you what you do. Start of turn, adjust the bag with initiative tokens. Roll the scenario dice. Do you get a roll of threat equal to or less than the threat level? If so, remove torches, flip lanterns, and roll on the threat table. If it's greater, increase threat. So it tells you exactly what you need to do on a card. Yes, you will need to look into the rule book to start with. I mean, it's not that big for no reason. Admittedly, a lot of it's, like from here, is all quests. And then from here is all about items and spells and appendices, basically. And then you've got settlements. So I'll talk about those in a second. So how does a dungeon work? So you come in the front, and then you've got closed doors, basically, like this one here. So you've got a closed door to start with. You open up the door, you roll a d10 and a d6, see what the door is. It might be wide open. And it's more likely to be wide open. Then you explore the exploration deck. So it tells you basically rolling, shuffling random rooms and random corridors. There's rooms and corridors. So here you can see we've got a room. Here we can see a corridor. It's randomly chosen. Then you pull it open. So when I moved through this door, we found the preparation room. Tells you a little bit about what it is. Tells you what can be searched. And it also tells you how many doors are connected to this room. One we came through, and then another one. And you place it anywhere as long as it's not on a piece of furniture. That's then a closed door. Then you roll a d10 and you see if you find an encounter. So again, it's random whether you get an encounter or not from the bestiary. Again, unless it's a special rule. And again, if we go back to this, on a d10, if you go into a room, it's a 50-50 chance that you're going to encounter a monster. If you go into a corridor, it's a 30% chance that you do an encounter. And then if there is an encounter, you literally go on the bestiary. You find out what, from the scenario, what type of enemy you're attacking. So let's say, here's the encounter tables. It's a bandit. You roll on a d100, and then it tells you exactly what comes out. And then, again, very random. So if you did 25, you get pox rats, 1d6 pox rats. And then there's, if I show you this one, going back to the... here we go. Going back to the quick reference compendium, then this is where the enemies spawn. So you notice they're all, well, not all squares, sorry. It just tells you how to randomize how it works. So 2d4, sorry. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you break it down into the individual parts, and then the second d4 will determine which square they come out in. And then you start to populate the board, and then they will, you get the standees and everything else. The beauty of this, though, is this exploration deck that you've created. At the moment, in this particular scenario, it's not a brilliant one to show you because we've had 2 doors, 2 doors, 2 doors, which means there's basically only been one way I could go. Let's say I go through this room, and for argument's sake, I will shuffle this deck maybe. No. There we go. Let's say you get a 3, you decide where they go, but because there's now multiple routes, so let's say this corridor's out and there's 2 closed doors, I therefore deal out the cards into this deck into 2 separate decks. And then suddenly your exploration is going one of 2 ways, and you put the deck wherever the doors are. And then you can just draw from the top of those. And if it keeps branching off, you've got to keep branching off that exploration deck, which means that you can lead towards dead ends, and then you've got to spend time moving and try and find your way back and everything else. Really cool mechanic. I really do like that. You got hit locations depending on what bits of armor their attacks will do. Weapons can do different amounts of damage. You've got bonuses like you would do in any game. So here you can see that I've got a plus 15 to my combat skill because it's a dwarf, because it's a warrior. Berserker, sorry. This is a dwarf berserker. So inevitably the hand-to-hand skill is going to be better, which means the range is going to be worse. So it's minus 10. You do level up as you go through the game. You can level up skills. I haven't actually leveled up. I'm still level 1. So as I say, I've just scratched the surface of this. I started in a random settlement, which I'll talk about now. So the board itself, or the map if you like itself, I started off in Colfell, which was random. Then you can do different things in the different cities. So in the rulebook itself, you've got your settlements. Okay, where you can travel, and then each of the cities have special things and things available. Obviously, Silver City is the main city, so it's got pretty much everything. I can tell you exactly what's in the Silver City. From the arena, where you can actually fight or just bet on. The asylum, banks, blacksmith, fortune teller, general store, guilds. So all the guilds are in Silver City as well, which is really cool. So that's the inner sanctum slicer. So like the Rangers Guild. And then you can do special stuff at the Rangers Guild. You can get trained up, skills training. You can do special talents. You can do skinning and butchering and taxidermist. So you can get specialist equipment. Really, really cool. It's so in-depth. It's very, very cool. So each of your characters will go and do something in the city, and then you need to spend a day. So you either pay the money as a collective party to stay in the inn, heal up your sanity, your health, and everything else. Or you just sleep in the stables, and then you don't get as many bonuses. And then you stay in the city for as long as you want, and then you decide what you want to do. And you can go to the quest board, and you can pick up things. This way they got different coloured numbers as you move around. So like Rochdale, for example, is per pink. So you got 3 here. Silver City is white. So you can pick up all the white side quests and different quests. Overall, it's following a story, so you can play through the campaigns. It also comes with a second quest book where you can generate quests if you want to, or you can go to Cult of the Hydra campaign. So they've got individual campaigns. It tells you what level it recommends, where you start the campaign, and the reward for each one. So you just keep doing these different little campaigns with your party for as long as you want. And then you just do several campaigns with the same characters and see what happens. There's enough random elements to make this really, really replayable and last for a really long time. And you can also, of course, and it recommends, you can make up your own scenarios and campaigns. Of course you can. And the beauty is, because all the AI systems are in place, you basically are creating the stories, but the outcomes you're going to find out from the randomness of it, which is really quite cool. I mean, you're going to know the random, obviously going to know what comes next and so forth. So that will be a slight spoiler towards one of the players who's creating it, but there's no reason why they can't join in the game. They just keep any spoilers to themselves, obviously. So it's almost like a DM playing as a player, which is really quite a cool idea, I believe. I'm going to bring this because I think this is really important to see. So, in terms of tiles, what you get in the game is you get outdoor tiles, I suppose you can call them, which are really cool. These double-sided, huge doors with map tiles with squares, like so. Okay, including desert, camps, all kinds of stuff. Okay, so you've got a fair few of those and settlements. So that's like the outdoor tiles, and that's some of the encounters you have. Then you've got one large, like room plus room. Then you've got the double-sided, well, some of these are double-sided. Not many of the tiles are double-sided. I think that was a trick they missed in this, actually, to be honest. A lot of these tiles, the vast majority of them, aren't double-sided. They're exactly the same on both sides. That's a bit of a trick missed because, save on cardboard. I guess cost, I don't know. Some of them are double-sided. So you've got quite a few of those. They're quite large tiles. Then you've got, including the ones on the board, you've got quite a lot of these in terms of these, these 6x6, 6x6 square tiles. You got some different shaped tiles with lots, and they're all unique. Every single tile is unique, so with different stuff. So that's like a little treasure room, for example. You've got corridors galore that you can connect it up with. You can make it all random, so you've got a load of different corridors with all different things in. And remember, all of the kind of features of rooms are on these cards. So you've got a huge encounter deck that you can literally tailor towards what you want to play. So in terms of replayable, it's massive if you take into account you can do your own quests. I think that's such a strength of the game. You got standees galore, so you can have as many enemies as you want. They give you plenty of standees. You've got the doors. Yes, you could have gotten a deluxe version where you get like plastic doors and all the rest of it. But this is the kind of strength of the game, is the sheer amount of stuff. So if we take beasts, for example, just check out the amount of very different beasts and how many of these standees. And they are, I'm talking about real gorgeous art on these as well. So you got like the giant spider, and it's got back facing and front facing. So you've got facings, which is really good and really clever because obviously you can backstab, you can do all the rest of it. They got like a zone of control at the front, and you can get around the back. Otherwise, you're gonna stop movement getting in front. Shamblers, giant giant leeches, satyrs. It also tells you if they're ranged or not on there. So it's even giving you information on the standees. You've got the brood mother, which I fought before. Slime. You've got little. You got a giant rat. I said little. It's a giant rat, but it's still a rat. So you got all these standees, and there are so many. You can do what you want. Gnolls. You got an Etin. You got demon, minotaurs, gargoyles. So you've got beasts, and a load of those. Orcs and goblins. And a lot of these will tie in together. So some of the stuff that you would use on the encounter tables for orcs and goblins will be in the beast pack, for example. But you got orc goblins and everything like that, which is cool. You got your magic users, which I put the exotic stuff in there as well. And then you've got your bandits and brigands, including arching ogre berserkers, all types in there. I mean, you can see the amount of what is that? Oh, a giant. You've got. Let me look at the giant. So you got giant in there as well. All kinds of characters. And there's centaurs, dark elves. So you got a load of dark elves. So these are kind of like units. Best way to call them, I guess. Mercenaries, but inside this mercenary pack, that's not just mercenaries. These are kind of like characters. So characters in this game. So most of this is characters, named characters in it, like Stephanie the Apprentice, Jada Reardon. Then you got some mercenaries, Josip Nellis, and the art is just gorgeous on it. So you've got characters, NPCs if you like. You've got a whole load of undead, including zombies, ghouls, wights, necromancers, zombies. You've got reptiles. They got whole reptiles, salamanders, but there's a dragon in there as well. But they got geckos, and you've got these. So they've got raptors. So they've got like a reptile unit, and then you've got the heroes. So this is just the heroes. The reason why there's so many is because they got male and female for every single race and class, which is really cool. So there's loads and loads of heroes to choose from. And again, the art is really nice on them. It's a bit shiny that, but so for example, full star, my human wizard, as you can see, is really quite cool. And then you've got my ranger, Elendor, which is elf ranger. Really, really appreciate the sheer amount of content in this game. And the amount of hours that you can spend on it. And then you've got, I mean, that's not even to go and mention the sheer amount of, so these are all the monsters. So you can see the sheer amount of content in this game is pretty ridiculous, really. And then you've got spells, you've got mundane treasure. So this is your treasure deck. It comes up with all the stats for it. The amount of damage it starts with. So when you find it, it's not pristine. You roll a d, again, random. You roll a dice and you see what you're going to come up with. Its value and its encumbrance, like the amount of encumbrance that it has. And yes, you have encumbrance in this game. So you can only carry them out linked to your strength. Makes sense. But you got all different kinds of stuff. So this is just mundane stuff. Cloaks, leather armor. And again, once you get this, what kind of leather armor is it? Cap, is vest, is jacket. So for example, even this has technically got five different versions. Then, how much is it worth? That's random. How much durability is it? How much, what do you call it? Encumbrance does it have? That's random. So it's really cool because it gives you lots of replayability and you don't know exactly what it's going to be. Were you lucky and find some fine treasure instead? Torches. I mean, this is really mundane stuff. But then it goes to fine and then wonderful. So there's several tiers of treasure you can find as well. Sorry, just put this back. Which is really cool. But you have got levels of spells, You've got traps. You've got a hell of a lot of exploration because you've seen all the tiles, and each one of those comes with an exploration card, which usually is random. So if you come and redid this mission, it could be extremely different, because not only is this deck can be different, but the order of this deck could be different. So you may not get, you might find your objective room after like 4 or 5 rooms, or you might have to really explore the dungeon to find your objective room and to find your objective. And that's what's inside of here. And there might be side missions and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. I've enjoyed this game. I haven't played it. I've played a few hours. I played several hours, but I've only played about 3 missions. But it has a real nice feel. But I also think its strength lies in its adaptability and the fact that if you're into D&D, this really just shouts for it. Especially if you want a kind of, do you want a board game that feels like D&D? This really feels like it. Yeah, of course you're not doing the kind of the stories as much. There is stories, of course, inside the books. That's not hugely rich. So please be aware you're not going into this massive narrative story. That certainly could turn people off, because that's not like D&D. But in terms of the depth and the kind of encounters, a lot of the systems, the dice mechanics, in a way, really make me feel like it is like D&D. But it's kind of like Hero Quest in the same sense as well. The exploration definitely makes me feel like it. The bits of furniture that you can search, it makes it feel like that. And the random nature of that. Really cool game. I really did enjoy this. That's my latest Kickstarter, and that is League of Dungeoneers. This was I believe it got released before, and this is the latest version. It did come with a expansion that I didn't get, but just to give you an idea, for example, so there's the world again. We're talking about 284 pages in terms of a rule book. That's pretty massive, not to say the least. Does come with an index, which is really handy, of course, and it's hardback, which is, again, it makes it feel a bit more premium. So that is my overview of League of Dungeoneers and my initial thoughts after only playing about, it's hard to put a number on it, maybe 8 hours, 7 hours, something like that. Still on level 1, by the way, which is pretty crazy. But really, really enjoying it. So, do you have League of Dungeoneers? Do you have Hero Quest? Do you like D&D? Put comments in below and let me know. And do you own this game, or have you tried this game? I would highly recommend it if you're into any of those types of game, D&D, but you want a kind of board game style, maybe even a dungeon crawl like that. This is right up your street. So until next time, keep gaming.